Hey there, welcome. I went ahead and decided that I wanted to go ahead and put out a video of some gameplay. It's probably not going to be very long, probably just a few games. But I just wanted to show you guys kind of what this deck is capable of after showing, showing off my deck profile and the combos and stuff. So you can kind of see how it interacts with other decks and things like that. I apologize, most of the decks, or most of the games that I got for this happened to be my opponent refusing to play and surrendering like immediately once they saw me get like Springans or Golgonda off, so it's not going to be too many high impact games or anything like that, but either way, I wanted to show it off, and we'll go ahead and kind of explain how what my thought process is like dealing with some decks like Tearlaments and things like that. So I have an older replay against a Tearlaments game. This is not going to be completely up to date. This is going to be using an older deck that I used that kind of switches up the extra deck and not too much of the main deck. This deck was still not using Scythelock, which I'm still on the fence of whether or not I want to keep using Scythelock or not. Maybe there's like better options out there. But the current build that I'm running with here runs Baguska, which I think if you're gonna play this deck and you want to try to handle as many options as possible, Baguska is probably one of the best things to put into this deck. If your opponent has a Max C, end on Baguska. This deck cannot handle Max C if it gets its effect off whatsoever. A lot of the decks that I use happen to not really be able to deal with Max C at all either, like Spright and things like that. I think with the addition of Sprint, that's kind of changed, but the fact that this deck can even play Baguska is huge, because Baguska is so hard to out for a lot of people, or for a lot of decks in general. And it basically just gives you 2 full turns to kind of like collect your thoughts and figure out what to do. Sometimes your opponent draws too much that Baguska can really deal with. You know, they have like tons of back row or something like that, but either way, this is the best thing to have for something like Max C. I do recommend maybe trying to slip this in your deck at some point, but currently, after you saw my previous deck profile video, you'll know that I'm not running Baguska at the moment. It's also running Gear Gigan X, which honestly, this card I don't think works very well with the deck anymore because Cyberstein is banned. This card I feel like was almost entirely used for Cyberstein. There's not really much else that it can do. I mean, it grabs a machine, great, but what else are you grabbing? If you've already gone into Gear Gigan X, you probably had cards enough to get something else going. He's not really worth it. The way it worked before was you would use Gear Gigan X to grab Cyberstein into your hand, and then you would go into I don't know what its name is, Gear Gadget or whatever, Platinum Gadget. You'd go into Platinum Gadget, and then Platinum Gadget gets a special out Cyberstein for free, and then you'd just get Exterio on the board. That was like what you used to do. But now that Cyberstein is banned, I don't really think... there's definitely not a use for Platinum Gadget whatsoever, but there's also, I don't think, any use whatsoever for Gear Gigan X, except for to maybe get you more material going into turn 3. I don't know what else he's possibly able to do. So I've definitely cut him. I think a way better card is Gaga Magician. Mainly just because of the being able to get a Utopic Draco feature off of a kit starter. I I don't regret cutting Gear Gigant X at all, so yeah. But it was kind of a remnant of the old deck that I used to play, or that I had set up in general. But Gear Gigant X and Baguska, and you'll see I have Draco Berserker, the Tenyi. This was like a really niche situation that I had him here for. If on my turn I'm able to use Psy-Frame Gear Gamma, I would go into Draco Berserker, the Tenyi. That might be confusing. You might think, why am I not going into Psy-Frame Gear Overlord? I don't have the card, plus I don't think ripping a card out of their hand is as good as banishing a card in this current meta. You could use this for something like a Kit Colosse, and then most Tearlaments players are boned. Like, blasting a Kit Close off the board into the banish zone, Tearlaments players cannot deal with that half the time. Sometimes they have so much gas that it's like way too oppressive, but huge advantage that you get off of this card, I think. Plus he basically stops any bestial card. I think it's pretty good. Maybe you can fit it into the deck if you want, but yeah, either way, again, this is like old deck. I think the getting off Psy-Frame Gear turn 1 off of, you know, whatever your opponent does is pretty rare. It's such a niche situation. I didn't really see a reason to not cut it. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get into the game. Start off with a really good starter. I have Gold Golgonda and Springans Watch, which is, again, crazy. Grab Kit, throw Rocky to the graveyard, and then Gold Golgonda. Well, I get Max Seed, but luckily I have Called by the Grave. Oh wait, this is the main reason I run 3 Ash Blossoms in every single deck that I run. A Crossout Designator and a Called by the Grave. I value being able to stop Max C way more than having Max C in this current meta. I know people are going to disagree with me on that, but I think relying on Max C is ridiculous. I think we've seen, like, with the TCG that Max C is not, like, a big deal. Like, banning it is not a big deal. It's not needed for your deck. It just stops combo decks, and you can, like, you know, put it in Nibiru over Max C, I think, for things like that. I think the fact that Master Duel still has Max C unbanned is kind of ridiculous at this point, but anyway, I digress. So we're using Gold Golgonda. We're gonna get Merrymaker as usual, and the Merrymaker's gonna toss Brothers. Brothers brings back Rocky. This is the tried and true of the Springans deck. Rocky comes back, and then Brothers comes back, and then Brothers normal summon into Cleafor Genius. And then both of them are going to attach to Merrymaker. I'll go ahead and speed this up a little bit. This is going to go into Sargus, and then Sargus is going to grab Tally-Ho. This is, you know, typical for this deck. You'll see this almost... like, any hand you draw is probably going to run this kind of an idea. You're gonna do something like this, but we grab Bronga off of Tally-Ho, but we're not gonna use Bronga to special summon off of Tally-Ho. We're gonna use Kit instead. Kit's gonna grab us, or Cleafor, Kit, and Sargus are all gonna activate here. Use their effects. I've mentioned in my combo tutorial deck profile that Gold Golgonda, you should probably protect it in your hand with Sargus. Most people don't do this. I don't think that if you're ending your board without Merrymaker and without, like, Explorer, if you don't have either one of these on your board, I wouldn't keep Gold Golgonda out. It's pretty rare that, like, Champion Sargus is gonna go off the board and let you use Gold Golgonda's effect. Because usually if you can just build a crazy board, you're going to stop what your opponent can do. And they're not going to be able to get an Xyz off the board to let you activate this. So you might as well protect it. Because who knows, they might have Harpy's Feather Duster or something. You don't want that to happen. And you don't want to waste your Regulus on something like that either. So spin it back. Grab Brandon and High. Get rid of the Max C. Who cares? It's a dumb card. It should be banned. Screw that card. We're going to go into Gear Gigant X. And again, you'll see how I use this. It's just for material going into turn 3. He's gonna grab me like a Rocky or something. I don't really know. It doesn't really matter. But at this point, what he is gonna do is just end up becoming UDF fodder, so... Yeah, so in the current build, what would have happened is instead of going into Gear Gigant X to get me more material, I would have just gone into Springans Merrymaker and then linked both of these off for Dagda, and then I would have had another form of disruption instead of just ending on what I do here. So that's kind of like you can see the improvement of the deck after this. So this is just going to grab me a Rocky. I can use it for turn 3. These guys are going to go into UDF. Yada yada. Who cares? Bronga, that's going to grab me Blast, because I'm going to have Sargus at the end board. And then, yeah. So, at this point, I have no idea what I'm up against, but my opponent, all I know is they had a Max C, and then, what do you know? It's Tearlaments. They had Scream, they had Reno Heart, and if I'm not mistaken, I think they also have Sheeran in their hand. So, at this point, like, they've wasted their normal summon. I know that much, right? So my thought is I want to just get rid of Scream. I don't want them to be able to mill. It's possible that they have Sheeran in their hand, but I don't know if they do. But it doesn't matter because I have Utopic Draco Future here. Even if they have Sheeran, I can stop it, right? So I'm thinking I just want to blow Regulus off the board here. Get rid of Scream's effect. And then at this point, I'm going to use Blast because it's, you know, it doesn't require a reaction. UDF can't hit Reno Heart at this point, so Blast is my only option. So I'm going to use 2 things to, you know, I'm going to do it this way. Maybe I could have figured out some other way to handle this starting hand, but I thought this was probably best. They do have Sheeran in hand. They had, like, everything they needed. I was, like... worried that maybe they had Havness. If they had Havness, then they're just better, right? Like, whatever. Crazy fucking Tearlaments hand, but I feel like I played this right. I UDF and then my opponent surrenders. Typical Tearlaments player not wanting to run the set, right? So that ended in my favor. It was pretty nice. Yeah. Anyway, let's go ahead and show another match. This one I actually just had. And it's another Tearlaments match, so... What do you know? Who would have thought? This is... So, I have, like, a lot of options here. This hand... I could start with Springans Watch and go into Golgonda, but I thought, you know what? Maybe we just start with Kit. Kit by itself gets me 4 disruption, and it's entirely possible that if I get any interruptions while trying to do my Kit line, I still have Springans Watch, and then I can toss Tally-Ho, you know? So that's what I'm thinking right now. It's a pretty good hand to start with. I have so many ways I can start up this. Start up some kind of end board here, but my thought is I'm just going to start Kit. I feel like that's best. And my opponent did have some kind of reaction here. I didn't know what it could have been. I thought maybe it was like Ash Blossom or something, but I wasn't sure. I knew it wasn't Max C because they let me get out so many special summons before they do anything. But anyway, I grab Brandon and High and get rid of the driver. Crap card to see in your hand, but this deck plays with Gamma pretty well, or Psyframe really well, because you can just toss cards back into the deck and not worry about, you know, drawing your Garnets. So Brandon and High is gonna toss Brothers and Sprint. Gonna grab my other Kit. And this is where I knew they didn't have Max C. They didn't try to activate it here against my Kit, so I'm thinking it's an Ash Blossom. So we go into Merrymaker. Merrymaker is gonna toss Bronga. And the reason I do this is because if they happen to disrupt my Merrymaker, or if they do anything, you know, or maybe if they try to stop my Sargus, I can still use them to grab something, right? I mean, if this Tally-Ho wasn't in my hand, that would be important, but I had it already, so whatever. And they have a Kelbeck. That's what it was this whole time. This wasn't expected, but, you know, Tearlaments, you should probably be thinking about it. And immediately after this, thank God Tally-Ho is a quick effect. So I activate that, and I can get some monsters on the board. We're not going to be able to get UDF now with this kit line, but you'll see what I'm able to do here. Rocky's gonna grab me back, brothers. Like this fool just fell right into my trap, right? Like, I knew they were gonna be able to do something here, but I didn't know what it was. Now, at this point, my thought process is they have something on board. They can't use Imperm. Imperm is one of the worst things to come up against in this deck, so I felt like I had free reign. If they had an Ashe, they would have used it against Tally-Ho. So I know they don't have Ashe. I have free reign here to do whatever the fuck I want. So I started cooking. We grab Regulus. Bronga is gonna grab me. I'm pretty sure Blast, yep. Because I know I'm gonna be getting Sargus at the end board. And then this is something interesting to keep in mind. Because of the way I did this, I can still use Gold Golgonda's effect now. Merrymaker is no longer on board. Gold Golgonda's effect is specific that if you can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If you control no Springans Xyz monsters, you can use its effect. And I've mentioned it before in my deck profile. Gigantic Champion Sargus is not a Springans Xyz monster. It is its own thing. Honestly, for all intents and purposes, this is a Tarian card. It is not a Springans card. It has the same naming convention as Tarian cards, except it just doesn't say Tarian in it. It is its own thing. It's not a Springans card. So now Springans Blast will not work with it, but Gold Golgonda is able to work around it. So I activate Gold Golgonda and I toss Brothers. We grab Explorer. I love this card. He's such a good boy. To get rid of Kelbeck. One of the biggest issues I run into with Tearlaments is letting them get too much material on board. So I thought this was the best thing to go into so I could get Kelbeck off board. I don't want them to be able to go into White Woman Jump Scare at all. That fucks me over so much, so I attach Brothers, and then I blow it up. This could get me into trouble. Maybe they have an Imperm or something, but I felt like it was fine because I'm gonna have a Regulus on board. And then we end with Springans Blast. So, Sprin grabs me Sargus, and then now what I have here is actually kind of a really decent board. I have an Omni Negate, I have a pop, and a bounce, a Monster Negate, but thanks to Explorer being on board, it has a quick effect to toss itself off the board. You can banish this card until the end phase. And with Gold Golgonda on board, let's see, where does it say it? If a face-up Xyz monster you control leaves the field by card effect, you can target one monster your opponent controls. It cannot attack for the rest of this turn, even if this card leaves the field. So this is what I was mentioning before in the previous playthrough. Always get rid of Gold Golgonda from the field with Sargus unless you can end with Explorer or Merrymaker. I feel like that is like the only reason why you should keep this card on board. So just keep that in mind. I can toss this guy off field whenever I want, and if he gets some kind of big monster, I can stop it, you know? Like, I don't know what they might get. I know it's Tearlaments because they have Kelbeck, so I guess Kaleido Heart or something. So it saves me a little bit of time. But yeah, so pop and a bounce, Omni Negate, Monster Negate, and I can basically stop an attack. He uses Sheeran. I let this go through. I don't want to get rid of Regulus just yet. I think that maybe this is a bad call. I just didn't know, again, what my opponent might have had in their hand, and they're getting off a special summon. I'm thinking that I'm gonna let them get Kit Kalos so I can Springans Blast it. It's kind of probably my best bet here. I probably, maybe it would have been better if I just negated this and then let them normal summon something and then use Springans Blast for that, but how was I gonna know that they had an Agido in hand? Like, that's crazy. So he dumps another Sheeran and an Agido. And then I breathe a sigh of relief. His graveyard, he did not get jack shit. This is why I hate Tearlaments players. They play off of like fucking roulettes all the time. So this was, I felt so good about this. But yeah, so they go into Kit Kalos here. And again, this is what I was saying before. Now I can use Springans Blast to stop my opponent's Kit Kalos from doing anything. So he can't get rid of Kit Kalos. Like, if he had Primeval Planet, he would have had it already on board. And he obviously can't use Sulliek or Crime because it's his turn. He hasn't said anything. So that's why I felt like, you know, there's nothing he can do with his Kit Kalos at this point. And sure enough, he's playing Branded alongside his Tearlaments plays. So this is kind of what I was worried about. Maybe if I stopped the Sheeran with Regulus and then I could just use Springans Blast on the Aluber, I would have been fine as well. But either way, I stop it with Regulus. Regulus is a good boy. Then he gets Prey to Plant, Verdier, Anaconda. So he's really grasping at straws here. He had to have known that I was going to blow this up, right? Captain Sargus is a quick effect, and Verdi is not, so I just blow him up, right? I feel like, I mean, yeah, he couldn't have gone into Elf, I guess. I don't know, that was all he could do. He sets one and he passes. Gets back Branded in high spirits. I draw the Tally-Ho, which is kind of nice. I wanted to get the Medora. Actually, no, I apologize. I was trying to use the Explorer to hit the back row, and I forgot he had Medora in graveyard, but it didn't matter. Like, I have so much I can do here. Sargus still has material, so he can still use his effect on this turn. That's something to keep in mind with this card. You have to have material to be able to use his effect to grab a card. Once per turn, you can also blah blah blah. While this card has material, you can add one Springans or Terrier card from your deck to your hand. That is something very important to keep in mind. If you can keep material on Sargus, that's really good. But most of the time you can't, so no big deal. But I have so much material on him, like, I was feeling pretty safe here. I just grab another Regulus. This is exactly why I have two Reguluses in the deck, because I can do this on turn 3. This Max C did not worry me whatsoever. I just Tally-Ho to get some free summon, or a free summon for that matter. And I just grabbed the Merrymaker that I tossed off, and then get the Regulus out on board. That back row is worrying, but, you know, I try to pop it with Sargus, and it turns out it's Branded Banishment. But if I did not have another Regulus, I would be hosed here. The fact that he didn't use this earlier is baffling to me. I had no negates. But maybe, I don't know. I don't know why he didn't use this earlier. If he used this earlier, it would have probably been fine. But either way, I'm able to Regulus this, and my opponent is left with absolutely nothing. I have no more special summons I need to do for Max C to screw me over. So I just go into battle phase here, and my opponent, I'm pretty sure, concedes. Yeah, so really cool match. I'm always happy to see how this deck kind of matches up against Tearlaments and things like that, but I have one more match I wanted to show. This is actually against Spright. Unfortunately, all of my replays that I wanted to show off are turn 1. This deck is really really tough to play turn 2. For that, honestly, that's almost every deck for that matter, but yeah, so... Anyway, we start off with a really good hand. Again, I am so glad to see anything that can stop a Max C turn 1. And this is a Gold Gorgonda plus Rocky hand, but you can see, if you remember my combo tutorial that I had in the deck profile, Gold Gorgonda plus Rocky can get you a pretty decent start, but if you have like any other machine in hand, you can get so much. Like, it doesn't even matter what it is. Like, this deck can really pull off so much if you know what the cards do and know how they interact with each other. You can pull off so much. So just kind of learn what each thing does, learn what their jobs are, and you can do a lot more than what you might think you're able to. So we go the typical Fort Genius route here. Normally, if it was just Gold Gorgonda plus Rocky, I wouldn't do this. I would send Bronga and then go into Sargus with 2 material instead by attaching Rocky. But because I already have Bronga in hand, because I'm already able to access him, I don't need to go in a roundabout way to get all my cards here. So I am going to go the Fort Genius route so I can get Regulus. Let's just speed this along. You've seen this before. Rocky Brothers, attach my boy Sargus. Tally ho. And then we grab Kit. It's always important to grab Kit. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but Kit is the whole way we get into Captain Sargus, the Springans card. Without Kit, we can't really use Gigantic Champion Sargus to his full potential, so just keep that in mind. If you don't get Sargus, it's not the end of the world, but without him, you can't use Blast, and you can't use Champion Sargus without another Xyz monster, so... I think there are some situations where you might end on... you might just pull Sargus with Tally Ho and then end with like Abyss Dweller or something. That's fair. But that's only if you have to work around it. That's really the only time you'll ever not grab Sargus with Sprint. All my cards are going to activate their effects, do their thing. We send back Driver. Like I mentioned before, the deck works so well with the Frame Gear package. Frame package, whatever you want to call it. We grab Regulus, my boy Tyrion King. Brandon and High is going to send Bronga, grab Kit, and then now we can go into the UDF combo, Dagda combo that I've mentioned before. This is what that original deck that I had wasn't able to do, so it just has more options. It's really great. I do like the current iteration of my deck for this right now. I think it has so much potential, and I think it has a lot that it can do, you know, working through disruptions and things like that. So it keeps on its toes pretty well. We go into UDF. One of my favorite cards. I love this card. Look at his artwork. Such a cool card. And then Bronga's gonna grab his Blast, and then that's pretty much our end board. Yeah, so my worry here with Crossout Designator is most of the time I can't really hit anything. I don't have Imperm in the deck, so I can't really... I mostly set this just to scare my opponent. This card is practically worthless going into turn 2 right now, because I can't hit, like... Imperm is usually what you want to use Crossout Designated for going into turn 2, I think. It's unfortunate that maybe I should slide that in somehow just as a target for Crossout Designator, but yeah. Kind of a useless card right now. At least for back row. It's strictly just to stop Max C for that, for what it's worth. So I'm up against Spright. If you aren't aware of how Spright works, if you they use their normal summon here. If you can steal their normal summon with UDF, do it every time, like a million times over. If you can take this normal summon, they are fucking screwed, right? Like, because with this board, there's nothing they can do to get around it. They are screwed because all that Spright is able to do once you get rid of their normal summon is to use Spright Starter, and we have Regulus on board for it. And even if they do have Starter, they can at most get 2 Sprites on board. Unless they have gas in their hand, obviously. They might have more Sprites in hand, which is always fucking annoying to run into, but if that's the case, you can always just Gigantic Champion Sargus their whatever card they have off the board, and then, you know, they're screwed again. But we also have Scythe on hand, so this is gonna look a little weird. This isn't BM. I was actually trying to do my daily. Don't ignore this. I was just cooking, I guess. Locked off a zone. Yeah, so we take their Swap Frog, and my opponent immediately sees the writing on the wall. There's nothing he can do. Yeah, so it's over. My thought was, like, maybe if they had something like another Swap Frog in hand, they probably could have done something, but they would have done that from the start, I think. So yeah. Anyway, I guess we'll go over the deck list real quick. Sorry, this isn't like edited in any particularly fancy way. I just kind of recorded this pretty quick, but yeah. If you watch my deck profile, this is going to look pretty similar to you, but you'll notice I changed it up a little bit. I did go down to 1 Max C like a psychopath and put in 3 Springans kits. It's such a good card to see turn 1. The whole reason I have it. This deck is unfortunately really really bricky without being able to hit its monster names. It runs so many spells and trap cards that, like, I feel like I have to cut back on something, and it happens to be hand traps. And the hand traps I value most are being able to stop Max C, because if I can get my board going, I don't really care, right? Like, I have Psyframe Gear Gamma, which is a really good hand trap, but it's hard to work around for a lot of decks, but this deck is able to work with it pretty well. So I think cutting Max C isn't that big of a deal. With the current meta, I think Gamma being able to destroy that card is really strong. Unfortunately, it kind of gets folded by Tearlaments, but yeah. So that's really the only change from my deck profile. But again, like I mentioned in the profile itself, you can change any of this as you want. I think the most important things to keep in mind is, like, at least having one of every card that I have here. This is not important, but as long as you have everything else here, you've got the bones, right? And you're able to do anything with these extra deck. It's just, if you cut back on some things, it'll make the deck less consistent. I value consistency way more than I do the hand traps and things like that. That's why I kind of have it set this way. But yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comments. I try to respond to whatever I can as soon as I can, but I don't expect too many comments, so it'll be pretty easy for me. But yeah, if you have any comments or anything like that, just let me know. And yeah, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll talk to you later. Have a good one.